Chapter 2 continued. So now that all the bad stuff's cleared away, I want to talk about the good stuff. I do want to address one thing really quick, and it is, why didn't you stop it from happening? I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. Maybe once, but people have intimated it in ways. I was told that if I made a stink about it, that it would tear our family apart. And that has my mom with us kids on her own. And she never wanted to do that again. It was bad enough having to do it in Utah. So it wasn't just about me and my needs. It was the needs of all my brothers and sisters and my whole family. Because of that, I feel like I paid the price for my family's peace, opportunities, cohesiveness, whatever. I had lived in enough cities. You know, I've been to Los Angeles and, Sacramento, San Francisco, and Salt Lake City, and Mayagüez, and San Juan, to know big cities and, introduced to evil and seeing things in cities that, I knew enough that a little girl didn't belong there on her own. In Puerto Rico, the men would, I was, 8, 9, 10, those 3 years there, we lived there 3 years, and the men would, cheeky, and try to get you. And I also, in the early 70s, there were these after-school programs on TV, and one was like a diary of a teenage alcoholic, diary of a unwed mother, diary of a teenage runaway. And, we all watched them, and the stories they told were terrifying. And I have to tell you, I really credit those to helping me make decisions early in my life. Basically, you'd see shows where girls had run away, and of course this was happening in the 70s. Everybody flooded into California, and what happens at these bus stations or wherever, that there's creepers there's pimps and bad guys waiting, and within a week you're turning tricks on the street. And I was already in that situation, and I had a nice home and a family, but to be pimped out on a street in some city and not have any security was unthinkable. And we always had nice homes, and we always had nice food and nice clothes, and my parents had decent cars. We weren't wealthy, but we were upper middle class, and I just was more afraid of the streets. It's kind of like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. I did try, as I said, trying to talk to my mother, kind of intimating it to my first dad and teachers and friends at school and, my sister. I did try. The only thing I didn't do was run away. And the only thing I didn't do was get into drugs and alcohol. Being an LDS, I really attribute it to that as well. We didn't drink. The whole life of drinking and drinks and liquor was completely foreign to me. My parents didn't drink. Nobody I knew drank, So it was all foreign to me. And, drugs, the biggest thing at the time, in middle America was marijuana, and of course that was nothing I would ever think of ever doing. And, hard drugs was for like cities, and it was dirty and dingy. And, back then it wasn't your mainstream people doing heroin and and all of that. I don't even know if there was cocaine then. So that kind of answers that question, I hope, for you. So the good stuff. As I said, we did have to go see my dad a couple times, or maybe just once while we lived there. I don't remember, but the once was the one where it ended up badly. And that's all I remember of going to see him. And they had moved from Lake Tahoe to Utah, to Orem, which is right next to Leslie. Next to Provo, Utah. Okay. We did go water skiing at camp. We were camping, girls' camp, for a week, which was amazing, in the mountains. I love the mountains. I love hiking. I love all of that stuff. Water skiing, fishing, we did all of it. We also, as a young women's thing, got to go tour the genealogy library in Salt Lake City, which was pretty cool. We did go down to Richfield for 4th of July. And to me, 4th of July, that's the gold standard, is the 4th of July in Richfield, Utah. It is Americana. It just is. It's a smaller town. I don't know what it is, but it was under 6,000 probably when we were there. And they had a big park in the center of town, because these towns were old, like, pioneers built these towns. And so the city park was the center, and they had all kinds of crafts and different events for kids in the park, and they had the parade coming. It was so cool. And then, you mess around during that day. And then in the evening, they have, a mountain near, kind of a desert mountain, nothing foresty or anything. And they would shoot the fireworks off the mountain. And it was just amazing. I remember my stepmother's parents, which will be Grandma and Grandpa P, step-grandparents, and he was just delightful. He had a garden, and he taught us how to snap peas and do stuff. So he spent time with us and took interest in us, and so he was a bit of a bright spot in that. And her kids were cute. I mean, we liked her oldest daughter was a brat. We did not get along with her. From her, there was a lot of, he's my dad, because you guys are adopted. He's not really your dad. And of course that went with how she felt about things. And so she was kind of a brat. The second daughter was, and she was a doll. And then his first son was a little bit of a brat, but cute as a dickens. And then his little guy, they had 4 kids. He was cute as a button. But anyway, so that was good. And then, of course, we lived in Iowa. We would go to see my grandma and Grandpa M. And so that was time spent on the ranch. And Grandma and I would get out in that old pickup truck. It was a on-the-floor stick shift, so I learned how to drive on the floor. Also learned how to drive in the column. And Grandma and I would go out and feed the cows. And she was not a woman who wore dresses. I mean, she would wear one to go to town maybe, or go to church, but she worked that land right next to my grandpa. And that's what I loved about her the most. Although she could cook and bake and sew clothes and do things. And I remember she's trying to teach me how to sew, and, it's not a gas pedal, But her dream was, and I guess there was some lady teaching this. Of course, there wasn't Google then. But how to sew without a pattern. And she thought that was the coolest thing, and she wanted to learn how to do that. She thought that was a pinnacle of sewing ability. And I just really admired it. Later on in my adult life, I made several Halloween costumes without a pattern. And I was really proud of it. I don't seriously love sewing, but I've done it. Yeah. So doing that kind of stuff. The horses, got to ride horses. They kind of picked out a horse for all of us kids. And my horse was Muldoon. He was a Clydesdale draft horse. So he was the biggest stinking horse there. I am a little short stack. Anyway, 5'2". And probably wasn't even that high yet. And so I had to climb a fence on him, and he was big and wide. And, I was terrified of falling off of him because it was a long way down. And so we learned how to ride horses, how to get up on them and, kind of handle them. And I would say that I am intimidated by horses. I mean, I think they're beautiful. The hayfield ran next to the house, and I would just sit and watch those horses run back and forth. And they had their whole, these systems of, a herd. And, this one was, friends with this one, and this one was angry with that one. And this guy thought this girl was cute. And you could just watch their whole, politics in their group, living together. And I loved that. And one time, me and my stepsister, it was my stepdad's third youngest daughter. Now, she happened to be a month older than me. Then there was me. So she's in July. I'm in August. And then sister number one to me is in December. So all three of us were the same age at times. Anyway, and she's a stepsister that I became best friends with. So we would go out and ride, and I would be on Muldoon, and she would be on Sissy, who is part Mustang, whatever. And so we would go out and ride, and Susie's like, I'm tired of walking and trotting. She says, I want to run, Sissy. And I'm like, no, please don't. Because Muldoon was big and dumb and gentle, and he was just going to follow Sissy. And I'm like, no. And she took off, and Muldoon just chases after her. I'm hanging on to that saddle horn with all of my life, screaming my bloody head off. And I lived through it. I didn't fall off. But I did not like to be riding something that had a mind of its own. But boy, I loved something with an engine. I actually shattered the clutch on one of my grandpa's trucks because I was following these ruts out, and they kind of split. And I guess I took the wrong ones, and then the wheels aren't going anymore because just sitting on top of ground, wheels spinning. I also, me and my sister number one, my Uncle Mike had an old Ford Apache pickup truck. And so it had a push button start. So me and Stacy lived out. He was married and kids and all that, and had a different place. So he lived in town. And so me and Stacy got in that thing. And oh, damn, it said her name. Me and my number one sister, my sister, got in it. And we go out in the hayfield, and we just start tearing it up. We're doing donuts and just all this stuff. And it's like a 1957 Ford Apache. This thing is old. And we were tearing it up, just having so much fun. And we got back to the garage, and we parked it and got out. And oh my gosh, we got the worst telling off ever by my grandpa, because we had just torn up his hayfield. And he was so mad at us. Oh, I won't forget that. Oh, it was terrible. But we had a hell of a time doing it. And, watched my grandma and grandpa pull a calf. We got to be part of it. And we got put to work. And we were working. Also in May, I think, April, May, that's called branding season. And so several ranches will get together. And my brother and the men from our ranch would go out. And I mean, you're riding miles to get the cattle and to get the heifers or the cows and their babies in. And so Todd, my brother, got to do that with the guys. I always wanted to do it, but I was a girl and I couldn't do it. but they would bring all the cows in with their calves, and then the little, it's not a pasture, but it is small, like, and smaller pasture. And so you had several men up on their horses, and they separate the calves from the moms, and the calves would come in, they'd rope it, and we'd get it and throw them on the ground, and they would brand and castrate and all that, and tag or whatever. Well, I guess they brand them, not tag them. And so it was our job to hold the calves down while they do all this. So we did that. It was pretty cool. And then when we finished our ranch, then we'd go over to the other guy's ranch who'd help, round up the cows and help. And so, and then, we and go to another one. They have a big buffet lunch, that the women had prepared. And so it was really fun. We loved going out for branding season. So I know how to not only get a calf down, but, hang on to it while these things are being done to it. So that was pretty cool. So going out to Colorado was nice. And then Iowa did have its good things. We lived in a small town, and we had a good football team and basketball team. And, we went to the games. I was in the marching band, and I was in the jazz band and the orchestra. So I was very much into extracurricular activities. I was in all sports. I was in track and field. I was in softball. I was in basketball. I was in swim team. What else? Softball, swim team, track and field. We didn't have volleyball, but we did have basketball. I think that's it. But yeah, so I was in all the sports. I was in the choir. I helped with the plays, but I never got on stage. But I would be, helping behind the scenes and, with getting costumes on and stuff like that. Later in high school, I would do makeup and help them with costumes, but I definitely loved doing the makeup part. We were active in our church, and there's not a whole lot of Mormons in Iowa. So we had to go 30 miles to get to church, and it was held in the basement of a bank, and which was kind of cool. And so during our congregational meeting, sacrament meeting, it was kind of divided by these big trophy cases. And sitting right next to me during sacrament meeting was a polar bear. Yeah, a polar bear. A life-size polar bear. And behind the guy, there was some kind of leopards or something like that. There were also like eagles and all these trophy cases are filled with these wild animals. And it was cool. It was so cool. I don't even remember. All I remember was the panthers, or not the panthers, they had spots, so leopards. And there was another kind of big cat too, but I don't know what it was now. I do remember the polar bear. He was massive. And maybe there was a brown bear. I don't know. But that's where our church was. And we were active in church. We were part of a stake, which is a conglomeration of several different congregations in an area. And that was in Omaha, Nebraska. So we would go to young, like youth activities and stuff down there, which was really cool. We lived next to, Storm Lake. I'll just say it. Storm Lake is a town near us. They have a big lake. And so we would, go to the lake in the summer. And one of the things my mom did, of course, now I know it was tax season and a refund maybe, but every year she would take us out to eat. And she, would make us have manners and teach us how to behave in that situation. And it was such a big treat for us because once a year we got to go out to dinner in a very nice restaurant. And we could order whatever we wanted. And asked her later why she did that. And it was because she wanted us to get, to have manners and know how to conduct ourselves. So that was cool. My mom was cool, but, she was working, I think, fullish time, maybe part-time. she had 7 kids in the house, one of them a baby, and it was a lot, with 2 of them that weren't hers, that, you know, you know, she had to treat with kitten gloves or whatever, and who didn't observe some of the same rules, like modesty standards or whatever. They didn't go to church, and, being us kids, well, it's not fair. So she had a lot to deal with. Plus, she knew full well what was going on with me. I think it may have happened, or he might have tried with my sister, number one, but she couldn't be kept quiet. But I was able to be kept quiet, holding the things over my head that were. So, but yeah, Iowa was cool. We did a lot of fun stuff. In our town, there was a racetrack for stock cars. And so, of course, they were on Sunday, so we really didn't get to go. But we did go every once. I probably went 2 or 3 times total while I lived there. We lived there 5 years. And so that was really cool. But you could hear them, because it was on the fairgrounds on the outside of town. They did have a fair come to town, which was cool. We saw some up-and-coming rock bands for the mid-'70s. What else? I don't know. Just, it was Iowa in the mid-'70s. And it was like you hear those Gen Xers on YouTube talking about this and this. Well, that was it. That's what life was. It was, playing with those merry-go-rounds that, you fall off and you die. Yard darts, hot slides, just spinning ramps for the bicycles, not coming in until it's dark. The streetlights come on. Just go outside. They didn't want us to be in the house. And so there was a lot of freedom, and it was good. For every bad thing that there was good. There was good. And so just wanted to come back and kind of, paint that there was a normality to it, other than the horror that was going on. So it wasn't all like, there was a good time. And I could shut off the bad that was happening to me, kind of compartmentalize, and then just have like this other me that could be, involved in school and do these other things and have fun and grow and learn. Well, yet that was all happening. I've never been one of those people that I'm upset by something or like something like that's happening and I'm gloomy and depressed and I need, we didn't even have emotional pets then, in fact, you didn't have emotions. You just shut it up, So, so I did have a full life, just, horror stuff going on at the same time. As I said, things started getting bad. I don't think that's why, because my dad's company, actually, they shut down. So he saw that coming. He was able to get another job. He went ahead, bought a house, got set up. Mom was selling our house. And when she got the house sold, we packed up and we moved. Where did we go this time? Well, Chapter 3 will tell you. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.